They need to do a little bit and get a massive result. But they try to do a lot. They overstress their mind and their body, and it pushes them backwards. It makes them seem like exercise is harder than it should be, and they get negative results. A beginning exerciser, their body's only adapted to doing a minimal amount. So all you need to do is a little bit more than a minimal amount done in a biomechanically specific way. And if you do that, you're going to get massive results.
Our next guest is Robbie Stahl, the CEO and founder of The Fitness Doctor. For the past 27 years, Robbie has shown men and women in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s how to feel 20 years younger. He is a pioneer in the world of anti-aging fitness.
Aging itself is an inflammatory risk factor. So as you age, you get inflammation easier, and your muscles from exercise stress will produce inflammatory signaling much easier than it did 20, 30 years ago. And so you want to try to...
Hi, my name is Chris Burris. I'm a longevity expert and the chief scientist at a lab focused on a longevity molecule. My primary focus is to help people live longer and better lives with science. Make sure to subscribe and share so you and your friends can live longer and better, so you and your friends can live beyond the norms.
Hi, and welcome to the next episode of the Live Beyond the Norms podcast, sponsored by MyVitalC. You're here because you want to learn about living a life that's truly beyond the norms. This can mean beyond the norms in terms of health, in terms of wealth, in terms of happiness, in terms of fulfillment, and longevity is often a focus of ours. I'm Chris Burris, your host and longevity expert who believes there is no reason to live longer, in fact, a lot longer, unless you are living a life beyond the norms. Our next guest is Robbie Stahl, the CEO and founder of The Fitness Doctor. For the past 27 years, Robbie has shown men and women in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s how to feel 20 years younger. He is a pioneer in the world of anti-aging fitness. He has taught thousands of people around the world an easy way to boost their health, fitness, mobility, and energy levels. Robbie, thank you for joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be here, Chris.
So I always like to get a little bit of background. Can you give us some background about how you came to focus on fitness?
Oh, on fitness or fitness for people over 50?
Let's talk about your journey, right? So if it started with fitness, great. Let's talk about that. Like, where did that come from? Where did that passion come from? And then there's probably some passion into the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, and eventually it'll be the 120s.
So my passion started at a really, really age, so young that I feel pretty strongly there's actually a spiritual connection there. And this might shock some individuals and really connect with some other individuals. And that is, I actually believe, of course, I don't have any evidence for you other than deep-rooted feelings and some spiritual journeys that I've had. And that is that I helped individuals before this life learn how to function with the body and prepare for being in this world. So that's actually a belief of mine. And as a young child, I actually started exercising by taking out, I had an erector set, which is basically the strong industrial box of mechanical building sets for older adolescent children. So I took all this.
I'm included.
Yeah, you're familiar with the erector set. Awesome. So I took all this stuff out of this strong box. I went in my backyard. I put river rocks in the box, and then I would start figuring out all these different ways to lift it. And my sister and my brother, who are 7 and 9 years older than me, were both into fitness as they got into their teenage years and later. And I kind of picked up some of the things from them, and I took this really natural passion. I would basically beg my mom and my sister to take me to the gym with them just so I could sit in daycare so that I could be at the gym, because I just loved being around this environment. So that's literally around age 7, 8. It started that young, by nobody even telling me what to do. If we want to stay in the young years for a moment before we really get into the academia, I read my first exercise science physiology textbook when I was 12 years old. And also in my teenage years, most of the athlete kids in school and and some of the girls who just wanted to really build their legs up and that type of thing, they would pay me to write programs for them, even as a teenager, as young as 15, 16 years old. So this stuff started for me, even from a professional sense, you could say, from a very young age. It was a natural passion of mine. I was not the best student, Chris. In fact, school is definitely not my favorite thing, but I had this massive passion in anything that had to do with science and human. So psychology, nutrition, exercise physiology, biomechanics, I aced it. And everything else, not so much. So I originally went to school to be a specialist orthopedic physical therapist. And then I decided after school that it would be best to focus in fitness. So I took all the knowledge that I had accumulated thus far, and I actually worked with elite level performance athletes, soccer moms, performance athletes, all different age groups, some senior individuals, but mostly I helped a lot of performance athletes with functionality, and I also helped some physique athletes really develop their capabilities. So you can see here in the background, I'll adjust the camera, you can kind of see here in the picture frame here, that was from almost 18 years ago. I actually did some bodybuilding shows myself, and there were some really amazing experiences from sticking with something that really requires years to prepare for. But what I found in the world of bodybuilding and in the world of performance athletics is there's a lot of dysfunction that gets created from developing your body with that focus. And it's really interesting, Chris, having a deep knowledge in physiology, I feel that the macro always follows the micro. In other words, for example, we all know that ego and letting ego take over in life is not a good thing, can lead you in some bad directions. Well, in fitness, it's no different. So most individuals in fitness, they'll focus on developing their body and for appearance reasons, and there's a lot of ego in that. Performance, because to be better than or to win the trophy type of thing, and there's a lot of ego in that. And what I found was I didn't really like living in the world of fitness for ego reasons. It definitely didn't sit well with me at the root of my being. And so the other thing that I started seeing, Chris, is that the more fit people got, the more injured that they would get. And it was like, even some of my clients, and especially other clients, I did focus a lot on functionality, but the more fit. And so I started asking why? Shouldn't it be that if you're taking the effort and actions to take care of yourself, you have all positive results? But that's not the case. There's a tremendous amount of negative results mentally, emotionally, and physically that come from fitness and exercise if you do it wrong. And so I was really on a quest 25 plus years ago to figure out what would the ideal exercise system look like. And at that time, it was kind of like, I thought every exercise an individual should be doing for a specific reason, but they're not. Most of the fitness training systems and programs were either fit into sport development, fit into bodybuilding, or fit into kind of Arnold Schwarzenegger days of exercise. And it didn't really have really strong biomechanical or body mechanics underpinnings of, well, do you really need to bench press 300 pounds? Is it a good idea to put a barbell on your back and squat more weight just because we know squats develop the legs? Do you actually need to do that? Does that develop quality of life? Is that going to help you live longer? Is that going to help the 99% of people who are exercising for quality of life, especially over the age of 50, to feel the best? No, it's not. So what we did is we did a 5-year research study with over 1 million case subjects, a meta-analysis research, and we wanted to find what is the ideal physiological exercise prescription or program, and what is the ideal body mechanics program to create optimal functionality. How much range of motion you should have in your shoulder. Should your lumbar, lower back really have good rotation versus your upper back? Like, you name the biomechanical detail, or how intense should an exerciser perform exercise, how many times per week? What does all the literature say? So for example, I know that over the age of 50, you should be recovering within 72 hours or less from your exercise sessions. Otherwise, there's excessive inflammatory signaling that's going on that's going to cause negative results in your body. So imagine the plethora of a bunch of nerdy exercise scientists and researchers and all these subjects that has to do with fitness getting together for 5 years. We developed the software. We tested it for a decade with hundreds of individuals in our facility here in Arizona. And we developed what we consider, and many consider, the world's best fitness training system for people over the age of 50. And we developed this to work online. So we feel we have some pretty solid answers after the instrumental efforts and research that we've put in for that. And, you know, and the shift, let me just share the shift and then we'll go back to you, Chris. And the shift from performance athletics is really seeing that fitness is not, you got to get ego out of the way. Because if you got ego involved, exercise will become traumatic to your body with the feelings of not good enough that we're all faced with. And so what ends up happening is the exercise session, not just from physical, which will happen for most too, but a mental, emotional reasons, it will cause excess trauma to the body because the exercise load and stress is actually a threat, which is why your muscles can stiffen and stuff afterward because they feel not so stable. So there really should be a whole entire neurological and body mechanics approach to fitness. And there's no better people in the world to help do that than individuals over the age of 50. Why? Because they're smarter with their body. They really truly care about functionality. And I get to help them live a more quality of life for a longer period of time versus just helping someone build their biceps, which for me is not nearly as interesting as all of those life improving results.
So you covered a lot, right? So very early on, even as early as 7, you're figuring out how to lift stuff. You want to be at a gym. People are paying you for programs when you're 15. You're doing lots of things over and over again, and that actually I hone in on that because it's one of the concepts that I have that ultimately success is really boring because success is actually doing the same things over and over again. And when the more elite an athlete you get, the more boring it is. You know, Michael Phelps swam the exact same pool God only knows how many times and ate, 50 eggs over and over again. So I find this fascinating. That study, kind of when you're looking at doing a survey of the literature, were you looking for where people had optimal kind of performance in over 50, right? And that's where you're kind of looking at, okay, well, what should this flexibility? Was that the target of optimal performance over 50, or what were you really kind of digging in for?
Yeah, we're looking at the biggest body of evidence we're looking at is for over the age of 50. And we you see, exercise is a stress and a degenerative stimulus on the body. Everybody think, exercise, if they see someone really developed, they must exercise 4 or 6 hours a day. Well, probably not, especially if they have a good amount of muscle tissue, because exercise is degenerative. And if you do that, you're going to actually get really thin and wear down your body and cause all kinds of issues. So because exercise is degenerative and is a stress on the body, I see it kind of like woodworking. If we're going to build this beautiful precision image out of a block of wood, we're going to have to be really careful on where we're taking little nicks and stuff away. Otherwise, we're going to mess up the image. Exercise is very much the same way. So I was looking at the ideal protocol for like how much pressing exercise an individual should do, or pulling exercise, or rotator cuff, or range of motion in every joint in the entire body. And how should you ideally stress the body in an exercise session for the greatest positive outcomes and removing all the negative outcomes? So like I can tell you exactly the position that the pelvis is in and the hips are in most situations when individuals wear out their hips and cause issues from exercise or even daily life and living. And we're looking at this plethora of biomechanical evidence and also the physiology of, well, how much intensity, how much exercise, what is the frequency per the age, per those factors. For one quick example, beginning exercisers oftentimes go wrong with their exercise. Why? Because they way overstress their body. They need to do a little bit and get a massive result. But they try to do a lot. They overstress their mind and their body, and it pushes them backwards. It makes them seem like exercise is harder than it should be, and they get negative results. A beginning exerciser, their body's only adapted to doing a minimal amount. So all you need to do is a little bit more than a minimal amount done in a biomechanically specific way. And if you do that, you're going to get massive results. And as you adapt to that, then you add more stimulus. It's just like a medication. You wouldn't take a medication with like some unknown large amount. There'd be negative consequences. But most people don't approach exercise that way. So per what an individual can do. So in other words, simple terms, an individual can do 20 push-ups. Their adaptation for push-ups, in other words, how much push-ups can they do before they begin to really fatigue the body and start to cause an increased amount of stress per what their body's adapted to, is only about 33%. So they'd only do about six push-ups is what their body's adapted to. At 7, 8 is the point that they actually start to produce results. So you don't need to do 20, and doing 20 would be a really bad idea. For example, and this is true for all your exercise. After your first 18 months of exercise, it starts to get to where you have 65% of what you can do, your body's actually adapted to. So hopefully, and let me know if those percentages make sense, but
yeah, I know, I like it.
Understanding those kind of things, you're able to get like exponentially more. And then there's a whole neurology that I would love to get into as well, in terms of it's not just about the physical, it's about the mental, emotional, mind, and the whole neurological connection with the body as well. So
yeah, I think there's a lot there. So when looking at going back to that kind of initial deep dive into data, you're looking at what adds value with, I think what I'm hearing is a more of an emphasis on, let's just make sure we're also not injured. Like first, no injury. Second, best benefit, right? Because you can get, more muscle mass if that's your thing, but you end up pushing yourself in the arena of potentially being injured. And let's not do that. That's not typically what a 50-year-old needs. And I think it's interesting because I recently did the Longevity Summit, had lots of conversations with lots of people, and one of the things that came up in one of the interviews was that people who haven't, I was an athlete in high school and in college and played some semi-professional soccer afterwards, and so I definitely know how to push myself, right? And people, you said something that was interesting. People are better with their body, and you may be actually more right than what I'm thinking, because I see somebody who hasn't ever trained, right, and has decided that they need to start training at 50, and they're unable to push themselves, right? They're like, oh, it's a little achy, and they don't. And I see that as a weakness. Maybe you see that as a benefit. Maybe you can comment on that.
Yeah. So that's macro. I feel this is hard. I feel get fatigued easily. Okay. Macro. Okay. So what is the mic? So this is going to tie back to what I said. The macro always follows the mic. Microscopically, your cells are not used to delivering the oxygen efficiently to the cellular structure. Your mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of the cells to produce energy, they're not as developed. You have less of them versus when you have more training effect. So they're not producing energy as well. Your body's going to give off stress signals more easily from a lower dosage of exercise. All those microscopic things are happening to produce the macro. So if we have unconditional love for oneself and we approach exercise with that. So one thing I say commonly, often, is intensity. You don't need intensity to get extremely fit. And the only place intensity belongs is in your consistency. Because here's the thing, by an individual staying consistent, you're going to get continual compounding effects from your exercise done in a mechanically optimized way. And if you keep on that journey, you're going to get more fit and more fit and more fit. And you're always going to stay that little gap away from what your body's adapted to for the stimulus. And it's going to get you amazing results. There's so many people that used to exercise in their younger years. And one of the big reasons why they don't do it now is because they know how grueling and how intense it was when they're younger. And they don't see themselves being able to do that now. And you don't need to do that. And so there's this whole mental, emotional, neurological block that keeps people from exercising. The reality is the science heavily shows us you don't need a lot of intensity. You need a lot of consistency done in the right way and sprinkle. Yes, in fact, you do need a little intensity along the way, but you sprinkle it in. You don't overwhelm your body with that intensity.
So just a couple things. I certainly fall into the arena of, former athlete. It was always consistent for me to just go out and do a 3-mile run. And what I found out, and this happened in the middle of the pandemic, I would run 2 to 3 times a week. And then my wife actually just started running 2 miles. And so I was like, well, why am I not running like 2 miles? I should do that every day. Like there's no problem with 2 miles. And so now I do, like I bike or I run for 22 minutes every single day. And that is in fact better than the 3 miles was just enough more time to go like, I don't really feel like doing that, where you got to pare it back. And so I've been, telling everybody that will listen, hey, like just move, just move. And I like what you're saying is, it can be daunting to think of, I've got to go out and train the way I used to. No, but you do need to go out and train. You need to do something for sure. I don't know if you've heard of this, and it just seems brutally useless to me, but David Goggins, I think, was training one guy one time, and he's like, how many pull-ups can you do? He did like 3, and they didn't leave the gym until he did 1,000. I don't know what useful message is in that. It's certainly interesting to be aware that you can push yourself as a human a lot further than you think you can. Like, okay, that's great. But when do you need to do that? And when is that of value? Because you and I both know that guy who did 1,000 pull-ups didn't touch a pull-up bar for 2 weeks, right? Whereas if he had done a lot fewer pull-ups, he would have actually had significantly better gains and less potential for energy. I don't know if you were aware of that and if you have any comments on that.
Yeah, I'm super familiar with David Goggins, and I actually like quite a bit of his work and his teachings on a certain level. And one thing I want to make really clear for everyone, and you can probably see my cauliflower ears. So in listening to my message, individuals might think like, oh yeah, like if I was just like a yogi and take it easy, like, oh, but other people, well, I want to get more fit from that. What I'm telling you is I've trained the most elite, famous athletes in the world, physique competitors, you name it, and myself too. And I'm here with the battle wounds to share with you what works and what doesn't, and how to get in the very best shape of your life in a more intelligent way and use a really intelligent process. So with that being said, I was raised by a Marine Corps drill instructor. And once again, all the message I just shared for the last 10 minutes or so is not going to admit, like, really? This guy? Like, take it comfortable and eat? Yeah. That I was raised by a Marine Corps drill instructor. And so I went hardcore. I did the David Goggins stuff. And David Goggins himself, like by the age of 40 or less, in his 30s, he's getting knee surgeries because he completely wore out his knees. He's getting overgrowth of bones that is super rare. He's causing all these deformities in his body because he's overtraining himself. There's a positive and a negative to everything. The positive is David Goggins has an incredibly strong mindset, and most challenges in life he's going to run through like a tank going through a brick wall. Okay, but most individuals, like, and he, he's a Navy SEAL. He's like preaching this warrior mindset, which is awesome, and there's a place for that. But I don't think all of us humans were geared a little differently neurologically. Most of us aren't geared that way. And by trying to treat everyone with that kind of mindset, it overwhelms most, it keeps most out of fitness, and there's this tremendous amount of health effects that we miss out on. So what the research shows us is the individual that gets up off the couch and is more of a couch potato, more sedentary, or they kind of just do this like walking once in a while and they think that's a fitness routine. It is. It's better than only sitting on the couch. But when you go from that to doing what you were just talking about, Chris, where you're exercising at least 22 minutes a day with some aerobic conditioning, mixing in at least a little weights, you're moderate. Just think moderate. When you go from none or close to none to moderate, the health results are exponential, like life transforming. Add another 10 plus years to your life, and quality of life feels like another 50 plus years to your life. But to go from moderate to elite level fitness, you get a little increase in health physiological effects. And oftentimes you get a lot of negative effects on the way. So, and that's looking at all the literature and then summing it up for you. Like that's what the physiological research says. And one more thing, like if you're going to be an NFL running back, I wouldn't train an NFL running back the way with, okay, you got to stay comfortable and do this. I wouldn't train an individual that wants to make Navy SEALs like that. But it's what is right for the goal. What my understanding is people over the age of 50, you want to remove the stiffness, the dysfunction, the lack of balance, the feeling of being aged, the feeling of low energy, the regain muscle strength, keep your body fat off as you feel like your metabolism's lowering, optimize your gut health. These things, that's what you want. And if you want that, what I'm sharing is this is the way to do fitness to get those results and get really fit over time by staying consistent.
Yeah. I love the intensity needs to be focused on the consistency. That's where the intensity needs to happen first. You know, if you're going to push yourself for some other thing, make sure like it's a reasonable goal, but the intensity is first on the consistency, which is a better way of saying it's really boring, I guess, because that's what it is. Like I'm walking, I'm doing the same jog, I'm biking the same route, every day. It's really boring. And it feels amazing. Like I don't want to downplay that. I get a lot of positive experience out of those smaller things. So I saw a lecture that you gave at Harvard, and you were talking about how many people get injured during exercise. It was a percentage that surprised me. I don't want to. I think we've talked enough about it. But what is that percentage?
So research based. Individuals, right? You've heard a lot about HIIT training, and I'm sure there's others that, an exercise you should do high intensity. And well, what is high intensity for the individual? For Susie, high intensity might be like 60% of her maximum effort. And for Sandy, it might be 85%. It just really depends on where they're coming from. But in high intensity training programs like the CrossFit style, the P90X, the Insanity workouts, there's a lot of them. I'm not naming any of them specifically or trying to tarnish any of them. I'm just saying these type of high intensity programs and many others that fit that in many gyms across the world as well. There've been researched and shown that 73.5% of individuals in those programs get injured. 73.5% of those individuals get injured. And I would say, I don't have really, other than we have done some research, it's not completely definitive, but we're seeing numbers as high as 87% plus of individuals over the age of 50 get injured exercising and cause excess wear and tear on their body. So that's why and I've seen the literature. So, your exercise should be therapeutic. Every session should feel like you're fixing your body while you're getting more fit. We actually have an event called Full Body Fix, but that's the goal. Is your session should actually feel therapeutic. Like even if you run, because you do the ideal amount of running that makes you feel good. You shouldn't be like totally beat up and your hip getting bursitis and all kinds of issues going on because of your physical activity. Something needs to change if that's the case.
And that was called Full Body Fit. Maybe we'll touch on that a little bit later.
Hey, super quick break from the podcast. Hopefully you're loving it. This is a way you can support the podcast and take advantage of a great offer. We're offering 50% off of one of our MCT bottles. MCT is an amazing oil. Add the ESS 60 molecule to it. It's even more amazing. All you got to do is leave a review on iTunes, send us a notification that you've left that review. We'll get you a coupon code that'll get you 50% off of our MCT oil and free shipping. Back to the podcast.
In that same Harvard speech, you were talking about kind of biomechanical optimization and really four keys. That was maybe 2 years ago. So I don't know if maybe you've honed that, or are you still on the same four, or where like what does that look like today?
Yeah, so there's motor control, there's stability, and there's mobility. Those are really the major things. So at Harvard, I think I must have broke those up. I had a speech writer.
It was neuromuscular, mobility, stability, and energy.
Okay, and your energy and how much intensity you should actually have in your training. Yeah. Exactly. So these are really the four keys. So biomechanically, which is the way I was thinking, is neuromuscular control or motor control. In other words, how are you keeping your body in alignment? What is, and most people think about form. So, form might resonate with like, what is the form that you're using in the exercise? But it gets really deep. It's not just form. It's what movement patterns in your body are you using and applying the most focus towards, and the alignment and the muscle activation that you're using in each exercise. That's what I would call motor control. Then there's stability, which in simple terms is how strong are your tissues to support and stabilize a joint position. So for example, like doing a lunge, most people, their knee falls to the inside or their pelvis and/or falls to the outside. And so they start to get this motion, and apologies for the audio being distant now, but the knee starts to fall in, pelvis starts to go out, and they start to contort their body. In exercise, we call these, in simple terms, movement compensations, or in science, kinematics, which is a diseased state of motion. And even if you're not, think about yourself as diseased, most individuals who are exercising, running, doing a lot of physical activity have pathokinematics, is a diseased state of motion or movement that will cause excess wear and tear on your body. And what is the root for most individuals in exercise? More load, more reps, done on a misaligned mechanical structure. Your nervous system will learn the motor control of being really good at misalignment and dysfunction. So you'll get better at dysfunction and ingrain those poor motor patterns. And then the stability, the next factor of your tissue, will learn to stabilize best in the misaligned position, because that's the way that the individual is exercising. And then the next factor is mobility. So mobility, having the proper range of motion and capability to have good quality range of motion, thorough range of motion, but also the comparison of mobility, for example, on the front side of your upper body versus the back side. Most individuals have excessive tightness on the front side of their upper body, which pulls the backside and their neck and their back and even in their pelvis. They start to pull everything out of alignment because of the lack of mobility in certain tissues. So if you focus on motor control and alignment and you strengthen the tissues in ideal positions, and then you have optimal mobility, when you go to play with the grandkids, or you go to ski, or you go to do your bike racing, or whatever you really want to enjoy and do in life, you're able to do so much better because you've created optimal mechanical function as a human because of the way that you exercise. So, and then that last factor is like the intensity. How much physiological load are you placing to get these results? So when I think about exercise, I think about it in terms of that.
And so I go back to 73%. Part of it me feels like that's shocking. The other part is I love doing sprint training. The feeling of sprinting is amazing. It feels incredibly youthful. Like I just really love it. I have also pulled two muscles, or strained two muscles is probably better. I don't think of it that they were full on pulls in the last year. And so I'm running this balance of like, well, how intense do I train? How intense do I sprint? Because I'm going to continue to do it. In my mind, I'm like, well, if I just injure all, because I think I've done two quads and one hammy. I think if I just do the last hammy, then we're going to be good. They'll all heal and we'll be good. I'm sure you're having a conniption like, Chris, this is not the way to do it.
You'll be symmetrical.
Yeah. But so, yeah, I think there are a lot. What is the number one thing that people do wrong in exercise? As they're whether they're starting or whether they're continuing it and kind of leading to that 73% of injuries.
They have the wrong focus of amount of mechanical movements. In other words, like a lot of individuals in home exercise will do push-ups. Not that push-ups are bad, but the way most individuals are doing push-ups is bad. And so one of like the number one ways individuals get injured at home is from doing push-ups. And it's not just about the push-ups. It's that it's something easy to start doing at home. And so they focus on a push-up. Well, but they don't do it. It's not as easy to train at home with pulling exercises. So they miss a lot of the back strengthening exercise. So that's one of the simple things that happens is targeting focus on the wrong amount of focus on certain tissues. So like you don't want to focus excessively on your pushing muscles of your upper body. You'd be better to go more volume towards your back and pulling muscles because you need a lot of stability there. And for quality of life and longevity, these factors, you want enough pushing strength to be healthy and highly functional, but you don't need to be a superstar. But if you make your back strength more of a superstar, you're going to have way more health benefits. So that's one of the things. And then simply individuals either exercise too low of intensity or too high. Too low, walking is amazing. I suggest everybody, regardless of your age, to do walking on a consistent basis. And some of us live in areas where it's like car based. It's not as likely for you to walk, like living in somewhere like New York or Rio de Janeiro, where you do a lot of walking. And so walking's great, but walking is not an exercise routine. And although there's some really important mechanical factors that stay intact from walking, it doesn't cover everything. And so you need to have a biomechanically optimized exercise routine. So you don't need to be a genius to get more fit. It's actually kind of easy. You just follow through consistently and you're going to become more fit, whether it's aerobic or strength, you will become more fit. Get negative results along the way. But to have like an ideal routine, you have to take a really intellectual approach to optimizing your body mechanics so that you can do all the other things that you enjoy and so that you're creating your optimal human functionality from your exercise routine, not just about effort or doing an exercise, but the actual mechanics. So those are some of the big factors that individuals kind of miss out on. And one of the things that we actually teach this for free, is like how to understand your body from toe to head. We have a week-long event called the Full Body Fix, where we teach individuals how all these details, because there's a lot of details. It requires a significant kind of education to really learn these things. And we teach that at that event.
As somebody, this kind of just popped into my head, as somebody is, getting into their 50s, 60s, 70s, maybe they're wanting to continue to work out, maybe they've never worked out. Why is it important to work out, right? Like, I think sarcopenia is certainly some of it, but on a scale, like, what is the most important reason if you see somebody who is maybe trim, right, but not fit, like they don't train, but they just have a good diet, or they're just lucky, and those are the kind of people who make me angry. But but if they look good, but they're not doing any sort of training, what would you say is the reason they need to start like immediately?
I would say that exercise is, and to couple your part of what you're saying here, like I hear a lot of individuals in their 60s, 70s, and beyond. Oh, like I'm getting too old. I'm too old for that exercise stuff, because they think about it in these ways, these intense ways that you and I have spoken about. And And the reality is beyond, near and beyond the age of 50, exercise is like going to the bathroom. You're not going to survive without it. Why? Because the thing, not one of the things, the thing that stimulates your body to be functional and maintain functionality is usage of your body. And so, going out in the sunlight in the morning to have the optimal circadian rhythm in the morning, being physically active, moving your body, contracting your muscle tissues, driving oxygenation to your cells, running your metabolic engine, doing some healthful degenerative stimulus to your body so that your body gets good at genetic transcription and rebuilding your tissue structures. And when you exercise, your muscle cells, so now in the last 20 years, basically the body of evidence has shown that they look at muscle as its own organ system. Because what is an organ system? An organ system that's basically a system that's sending out signals to other systems, and it has its own environmental impact on all other systems in the body, right? In the simple terms. The muscles signal all other cells in the body to become more active, to upregulate, to be functional, to be able to support the physical activity. So if you don't exercise, you're saying, hey, we don't need to do all these things. You can go quiet. You can build senescent cells, which are cells that are weak and kind of barely making it because there's no real stress in the body. You can decrease the powerhouses of your cells that produce energy. You can decrease blood flow. You can shrink neurons in your body that ignite and create all these functionalities in your body. You can change your hormones to not support physical activity, and you can go towards the grave. You are literally telling your body that if you're not exercising. And if you are exercising, that opposite is true. So it's literally that powerful.
Yes, you absolutely need to be exercising. When I kind of interviewed 55 experts across the board, about 52% of them gave a tip, hey, exercise, and I'll be asking you for tips at the end, that exercise is that important. And I actually considered, and we'll probably go back and look at the data and change it from movement versus exercise. Like, I think those are two different things. You really do need to move. And I love the phrase, a lot of people exercise, and maybe this is more, in your 20s, where you're exercising to pay penance for the digressions you had, the cookie, the donut, maybe drinking or whatever. And I love this quote, which is, I exercise to express the beauty that the body has, right? The body has this beautiful capability for movement, and that's the real reason to exercise. So absolutely. What level of it, like if you were to just describe the level of intensity, and I think we've done this, it's maybe a little bit of the Three Bears porridge situation, but what level of intensity should one use for the best fitness results?
That depends on two factors, and where you are now, and I'll give some spectrum so we can get some value for your listeners. And so where you are now in terms of your fitness, your capabilities, do you have injuries or like body issues, mechanical issues, pain in your back, hip, shoulders, whatever's going on? So that's one. And what are your objectives? Are you trying to win the next senior Olympics, or you're trying to just have the highest quality of life possible? So it really depends on these two spectrums, and how much exercise and intensity is optimally. You really want to get up to where you're doing about at least 60 to 90 minutes of physical activity every day. And before I scare people away, that could be like a walk one day and a few light stretches with some good quality breathing and body mechanic alignment breathing. So that's like one session day. So it could be easy stuff. Next day, you might have a 40-minute strength routine where you're doing strength training and different activity, and then you're doing 20 minutes of stretching near the end of that session. Or you add the 10-minute warm-up, the 40 minutes of strength, another 10 of mobility at the end, right? So it's you want to have mobility in your training. You want to have strength in your training. And what are we training for when you hear this word training? Quality of life, continual living, optimal functionality. So when I say training in my world, it's training for that. Mobility, strength, aerobic conditioning, and 60 to 90 minutes per day. So, there's like the American College of Sports Medicine recommendations. The general thing you're going to hear is 75 minutes a week of high intensity exercise, or 150 minutes of moderate exercise, or a combination of those are the most. But what we found in the research is that is really lackluster. So although I don't want you to push yourselves in the wrong way, I also tell you it's really important for you to be highly physical active in a highly enjoyable way. So be nice to your body, listen to your body. It'll tell you when enough is, when it's too much. Listen, don't, I would suggest, especially in the beginning, give yourself with the same kind of exercise routine a month to 2 months. And then once you've adapted, then start to push yourself with the same routine for another month, and then adjust it, right? So in exercise, it's more important that you have build-up periods, and then you have planned regression periods, and then build-up periods and planned regression periods. What most people do is they push and then push and push and push and put and break. And now back off because I broke, or I strained my hamstring or some other issue, and now I'm ready to push and push and put and break. And then back. So you want to plan your back offs so that you don't have unplanned back offs. I think that's the biggest message.
No, I think that's really, really valuable, right? Because it's the unplanned ones that I remember when I did pull my quad, I like my just first, like this blood draining out of my face, thinking, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to train. And then I think to the point that we've collectively been making, keep moving. I was on a bike the day after. So I skipped one day and I was on a bike, being mindful not to pull on the pedals, right? But to push, just because you really, if you want to heal faster, you got to get your blood flowing and you got to keep moving. So I don't know if it's a horrible message and a good message, even with a pulled muscle or a strained muscle. Like, I'm still going to keep doing, I'm still going to, whatever it is that I can. And literally in my head, I'm like, well, if I'm just going to stand there and do, curls and just upper body stuff, that's what I'm going to do. Cause that blood pump is that important. I think that's that's really valuable.
What I would share on that, Chris, is your systemic fitness will help acute issues or local issues heal faster. So if you keep overall fitness, I love the mentality you just shared. So if you have one part that's off, that doesn't mean your whole body stops. That means you take care of the area that you had an issue with, and you improve your overall body fitness, because the way your actual body works is by staying more fit overall. It's going to help that body part that you're not using as much heal much faster. So absolutely. And your muscles, again, they're literally secreting substances to heal the injured area because you're keeping the other parts going.
Yeah. And your body can focus on it because the other parts are not in a state of really inflammation, is what we're talking about. So you've got your program Full Body Fit. Do you get into nutrition discussions? It's obviously incredibly important when it comes to physicality and health.
Yeah, nutrition is huge. In our Full Body Fix event, we don't get too deep into nutrition. We do have something called a VIP training system and a VIP family. So we have an exclusive clientele. We don't call them clients. We call them very important people that become very impressive physically. They're all over the age of 50. That's what this heart around the VIP on my shirt stands for. So in that, we get into a lot of nutritional factors, and we have a fitness doctor, team nutritionist that works with our VIPs. At the Full Body Fix, we focus on all the biomechanical factors, all the details, stiffness, age-related feelings people are feeling, like you name it, individuals that don't have so many issues, but they want to make sure that they age gracefully. We cover all of it, and we go through the full body from toe to head. And, it really, starting with the body mechanics is the most important factor, so that when they start doing a full fitness routine, it's body mechanics specific. Because one of the other things that goes really wrong, Chris, and that I see in fitness, is aging itself is an inflammatory risk factor. So as you age, you get inflammation easier, and your muscles from exercise stress will produce inflammatory signaling much easier than it did 20, 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so you want to try to do things, that's one of the reasons why, Vital C works so well, is it helps with the antioxidants, but it also helps with the inflammatory conditioning as well. So, that supplement's amazing because it helps with that. Well, in exercise, we want to make sure that we're not over stressing or creating too much of what we call a cascade of inflammatory events inside your body because of the exercise. So it's really important that your exercise is just enough for the result, but not so much that we create that excess inflammation beyond. So if we take the mechanics that we learn at the Full Body Fix, going toe to head, and then we take an intelligent approach, you have an ideal routine there.
Yeah. So I am on a protein kick right now, and it may be in 12 months. I wouldn't ask this question, but how much protein do you take? Like, what's your protein? What's your focus on protein?
When I'm really going after physical goals, it's at least like a gram per pound of body weight. At least a gram per pound of body weight. Now, when I'm more in a maintenance phase, when my wife and I are traveling to Europe, and of course I stay physically active, we're doing a ton of walking, and I'll still do my workouts to a lesser degree, but I'll keep them going. Then my protein might be about a gram per pound of lean body mass. And one of the big things I'll say for people about protein is, individuals, I would say most individuals have too low of protein. One, they're eating like 50 grams of protein a day. And it's really important to have a significant amount of protein. You can cycle your proteins if you want to do the whole longevity game where you're not always giving your body too many nutrients, where you're going to produce excessive cellular signaling and mTOR. And there's this whole subject now in the anti-aging field about, if you're always eating and you're not fasting, then you're going to basically overload your body with nutrients and you cause yourself to age faster. Well, there is some truth to that, but what I've seen go wrong with that message is individuals kind of stick with what's easiest, and it's easier to not eat. So they'll end up putting themselves more in famine all the time. And boy, is that a horrible, but great way to create more sarcopenia, more muscle loss, and more. With that said, build your protein up. So if you're at 50, you're not going to jump to a gram per pound of body weight. You're going to go to 70. And there's actual enzymatic functionality in your body where you begin to adapt to that new protein load, then go to 90, then go to 110. If your goal is to get to 150, stair step it. I think all health actions should be stair stepped. Your body will adapt to it. So personal answer, about a gram per pound of body weight. And those are my recommendations for others as well.
That is my focus right now, and I can share that it's a lot of protein. That is a lot of protein. I walked into my office and my office mate, and I was like, I'm here with if I shove another piece of lean turkey in my mouth, it probably isn't going to leave my mouth because I'm just here. It's a lot of protein, and I think when you start thinking about the negative impact of sarcopenia, like muscle wasting as you age, and how our bodies are, replenishing our muscle cells every 3 months. These are processes that need to happen. If you're not providing the raw materials, then it's going to go well, we're just going to skip those muscle cells and you're going to get that deterioration. So I think you need to be very mindful of it. This has been an amazing conversation. I have some wrap up questions for you. Do you have a target age that you want to live to?
120.
120. I like it. Very succinct. And how long do you think humans can live?
I think all of those kind of things are capped by our mind, our emotions, and our energetic fields. And I think science has an infinite amount of discovery to happen. And we're going to see that in our lifetime, and it will continue and continue. So I don't know if I can put a number on that, because I think, a huge 180, 200 years old, maybe more. I think it is It is possible. Obviously, there's some things for us to discover and things we need to do to get there, but I think it's eventually possible.
I like it. 180, 200, and beyond, I think is maybe a reasonable answer. All right. What 2 to 3 protocols, habits, mindsets, let's call them shortcuts, to longevity and a long health span would you share?
So shortcuts to longevity?
Yes. Or mindsets or habits.
I really feel strongly and first, where's my answer coming from quickly? And then the answer.
Yeah.
My answer is coming from watching my VIP family. So I have hundreds of VIPs that my fitness doctor team and I support on a daily basis. I've watched those who succeed and those who struggle and those in the middle. And it's not just because they've been blessed with the perfect body or they don't have tissue strains or stuff that's happened with their body. The ones who really excel, they have all kinds of challenges, but they have a mindset that embraces challenge with open arms, a mindfulness, and they learn to breathe through it and have greater trust, unconditional love for oneself, unconditional love for fellow man and woman. And it makes all the difference in the world, and all the things and the science and stuff is just like the little details that you apply along the way. But that mindset of embracing challenges regardless of age and continuing to build a bigger, better quality of life, that makes all the difference in the world.
Okay, so number 1, mindset. You got 1 or 2 more that you would add?
Mindset, exercising consistently. Exercising, optimizing your body mechanics with exercise consistently, however you want to put that in a succinct way. And I would say breath, and there's a lot behind breath. There's a lot. There's keeping yourself calm, keeping yourself mindful, learning how to deal with stressors better, embracing challenge. But it really comes to breath, because in most situations, if you connect with your breath and you go mindful in the moment, so mindfulness / breath is what I would say.
I love it. Robbie, how can people contact you?
The best way to contact us is to reach out to Patricia at thefitnessdoctor.com. Patricia, so that's PATRICIA at thefitnessdoctor, all spelled out, .com. And so Patricia's my better half, by the way, Patricia Stahl, and she fields all these kind of communications, and she's our chief of staff, so she keeps those systems running. And then you might also like to share the Full Body Fix.
Yeah.
So the Full Body Fix is an event, and we have different ways to join us depending on the time of year. We do 4 different Full Body Fix every year. So we have one starting here on February 3rd. We have one coming in May. We'll have another one in August, and then again in November. So I'll give you that link afterwards, and we'll make sure you have that in the show notes.
Okay, yeah, we'll get that included in the show notes. That sounds great. And what in the near future are you excited about?
Continual improvement. I live every day to make the best day that I possibly can, and I live by the motto of 2 things: constant, what I call CNEI, CNEI, constant, never-ending improvement. It never ceases. To the day I'm done here, which I don't know when it'll be. I'll never stop. And make it a great day. I make each day a great day, and it's up to each individual for you to make it a great day.
That's awesome. We'll have the link for the Full Body Fix in the show notes. You can reach out, Patricia at thefitnessdoctor, all spelled out.com. Robbie, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're so very welcome. It's wonderful to be here, Chris.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Live Beyond the Norms podcast. Make sure to subscribe and follow. Also, make sure not to be that guy, the guy sharing this podcast with people who are not interested in living beyond the norms. If you would like to learn more about the ESS60 molecule, the molecule responsible for the single longest longevity experimental result on mammals in history, a full 90% extension of life, visit myvitalc.com. That's myvitalc as in carbon.com.